Righto, thank you everybody for your patience there. I think we've got everybody in the virtual room that we need. We may get some late joiners, but I think that we will just get rolling and they can obviously join later on. Firstly, welcome to this information session about the proposed residential development at 500 Burwood Highway. Thank you everybody for your interest in the project and your attendance tonight. Tonight is principally about providing each of you with an opportunity to ask questions about the proposal and for us to endeavour to answer those questions as best we can. And for you to also provide us with your sort of thoughts and feedback that you might have for us to take into consideration. And to this end, we have a number of people attending tonight from the project team that is responsible for putting together this proposal. I'm Mark from UPCO, Town Planning Consultants for the proposed community housing provider at this site. I'm joined by my colleague Holly, and we also have Sam in the room as well, or in the background at least, to provide some sort of technical support if we need it, and hopefully we don't need much of that. We also have representatives here. We've got Jamie and Gareth from Community Housing Victoria, who are the community housing providers who will be ultimately owning and managing the accommodation. We have the architecture team from CHT Architects. We've got David, Dean, and I think we probably have Brian there somewhere too. And we have the project managers from Focus On. We have Nandor and David in the room as well. And I believe Linda. We have Linda too, who is from Track Consultants, who are our landscape architects. So between us, we're hopefully very well equipped to answer any questions about the project that you might have. In order that we make this session as informative and productive rather for all of us, we intend to adopt some sort of broad structure. We don't want to overstructure it, but we think that we need to provide it with a little bit of direction so that everyone can get as most out of the session as possible. Firstly, we intend to provide a very high-level overview of the key aspects of the proposal before then inviting your questions and comments. We won't take up too much of the time allocated for our meeting here tonight in doing that. But just to give you a broad idea of the structure, firstly, I'm just going to provide a very quick summary of the application process and perhaps how that differs from a conventional or more conventional planning process that some of you may be more familiar with. So I'll do that shortly. I'll then invite Jamie from Community Housing Victoria to provide an overview of the organisation and the services and facilities that they manage, not only here in Victoria, but across the country, and in particular, the interest that CHVL has in this particular development in this location and the role that they see that playing in the provision of community and social housing for the City of Knox. And then finally, we'll get the project architect CHT to just provide a quick presentation focused on the design of the proposed building. And then it'll effectively be open to the other attendees to ask questions. Again, in the interest of making sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to ask questions and provide us with feedback and thoughts for consideration, we'd ask that you just follow a couple of key protocols, which I'll just run through now. Firstly, if you have any questions during the initial presentation that I've just described, could we ask that you please write that question in the chat function of this meeting? You'll find the chat icon at the bottom of your screen, centrally located. In fact, I can see I've already got a message in there now. Following completion of the presentation, we'll endeavour to direct each of the questions that we've received in the chat to the member of our team that's best equipped to respond. And anyone thereafter that has a follow-up question on that particular topic, if I could please ask that you raise your virtual hand, which you'll find again in the bottom of the screen along the bottom toolbar in the reactions, on the reactions tab. If you press that, there'll then be an option to raise your hand. And we will endeavour, or we will then invite you to contribute one by one, again, to avoid any confusion or people talking over one another. So just some sort of general ground rules that we'll try and follow to make sure things go smoothly and that we can convey and answer questions and convey information and hear your feedback, I guess, in the most effective way possible. But rest assured, if there are any remaining questions or comments that you wish to contribute after we've made our way through the list of comments received in the chat, there will be an opportunity to do that. So I'll prompt you at the appropriate time. And again, I'll direct you at that time to please raise your hand if you have something else to contribute. The final thing I'd ask you to please do, and throughout the course of the meeting, is to mute your microphones when you're not talking. We're obviously very conscious that these online platforms can present their challenges, particularly when there's a number of people in the room like there is tonight. So I'd kindly ask for everyone's cooperation for the benefit of everyone in trying to just adhere to those protocols. I'm just got another couple of people here that I'll let in. The last housekeeping item, actually, before I move on to the project and a quick presentation, is just to reiterate that this meeting tonight is being recorded, and that's really for our benefit so that we don't miss any of the feedback that we receive, and we can go back and make sure that we've captured all of the comments and who they've come from, and to make sure that they're all being given due consideration in the process going forward. So on to the reason that we're all here, which is the development proposal for 500 Burwood Highway. As explained, I guess, in some detail in the letters you will have all received, this information session is part of the planning application process, which includes engagement with all project stakeholders, which include yourselves and the broader community surrounding the site. And it includes the council. And I specifically mention the council here because it's probably worth reiterating or perhaps further clarifying at the start of this session that the application that we'll be discussing is not a conventional proposal that is submitted to and determined by the council. The council's views are, on the application are, of course, sought and considered, but it will ultimately be the state government to whom the application for this proposal is formally made, and whom will be responsible for assessing and determining that proposal. The project is part of the government's Big Housing Build initiative, which seeks to increase the supply of social and affordable housing across Victoria. Prior to reaching this point in the process, a rigorous site selection and suitability analysis has been undertaken and conducted by the Victorian government. And I guess, in a nutshell, this site and a number of others have effectively been approved through that initial process to then proceed to a more detailed design preparation stage, which is where we currently sit. It is relevant, I think, in this context, specific context for 500 Burwood Highway, that this site does benefit from a current and live planning approval for an 8-storey mixed-use development. That development includes apartments and some office and retail uses. And that approved building envelope has largely been relied upon to develop this current housing proposal. Should the project ultimately be successful in obtaining approval, Community Housing Victoria will own and manage the accommodation as a registered community housing provider. So on that note, I'll perhaps hand over to Jamie from CHVL to provide you with some information about that organisation and more specifically its interest in this site. So Jamie, if I could hand over to you, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Mark. Thanks everyone for your time tonight. Nice to virtually meet you all. So my name's Jamie Hutchinson. I'm the Community Development Manager at Community Housing. So I'll just give you a bit of a spiel about who we are at Community Housing and how we work with community and some of our services. So we're the largest not-for-profit company that delivers affordable housing, community housing to those on low incomes in Australia. We're a tier 1 community housing provider under the National Housing Regulatory Scheme and also in Victoria. And basically what that means is, we've essentially got lots of people making sure that we're doing the right thing all of the time. Lots of reports, that means. We were established 28 years ago in Melbourne, and we're now in 8 countries and have more than 11,000 properties under our management. In Victoria, that means we've got about 2,200. It's a mix of transitional long-term properties that we have there. And in particular, we've got about 165, I think, in the Knox area already. Next slide. So just an overview of our services. So essentially the first one is tenancy management. So the bread and butter, if you like, so the rents, inspections, security, managing disputes, those sorts of things. So the core services that any landlord would offer. We offer the property management as well. So we maintain the buildings, we manage repairs. And to that note, we have an internal maintenance team. So we obviously work with a number of different contractors, but unlike some other organisations, we have an internal maintenance team, which gives us a better responsive nature to react to anything that does come up. Also maintaining the gardens and the landscaping. Part of what we also offer is our community development team. And that team also is about embedding that approach in what we do. So aside from our housing officers and our asset team, we also have a community development team that I look after. And as part of that, we are involved in making community partnerships with people, having community-led projects by people within the community, engagement opportunities, and also social impact, which is really important to what we do. So next slide. So just to give you a bit more of an example around what that means for the community development arm. So we essentially listen and respond to residents' needs. And one of the things that we do at CHL that might be a little bit different is in community development, we don't just work with our own residents. So obviously it's very important that we want to work with our own residents to support them through health and well-being and to sustain a tenancy. But we'll also work with other people in the area. So as an example here, we would work closely with the aged care facility next door, the school, any other community agencies and any other residents that we might know. And the reason that we do that is because we often develop community partnerships and we want to do that for the benefit of the entire community. To give you an example, we're currently part of the Baronia Community Network, which I try to attend, well, virtually these days. And the things that kind of come from that can be different things around how the community responds to COVID when it did appear, to other things that happen within the community, such as community facilities. So we are kind of entrenched in that part of the community already, and see that kind of expanding to this area as well, just to give you an idea of how that works. So we work with schools, employment and training opportunities, community projects. And what that can kind of look like, to give you an example, is we've got a number of properties in Ferntree Gully. So when I first started at CHL, which was around about 3 years ago now, although to be fair, I've kind of lost track of everything since we've been in lockdowns. We developed a partnership there with the council and a neighbourhood house, and we run a number of community days. That led to us delivering a number of different health and wellbeing projects for the residents there. And what that did as well is that it enables us to kind of meet people within the community and enabled us to kind of get to know what their needs were, and then establish some broader education opportunities for those people as well. We're also doing that. We do that in most areas that we work across Australia. In particular in Melbourne, we've been doing some work in Derrimut to do something quite similar, working with a local school. So we really try and immerse ourselves in the community, get to know the community, and also so the community know who we are. So it's very much a two-way line of communication. So some of those other things that we look to do are examples of resident programs, including health, financial services, health and wellbeing, tenant meetings as well, community meetings, community grants. So we have an impact grants program that we offer to all of our residents at CHL that gives them the opportunity for education, social connection and community grants. And we also run place-based activations and events. So as an example, in Western Melbourne, we teamed up with a number of different people within the community where our properties were located. And at that site, we had around about 80 approximately. And we teamed up with the local school, the local soccer club, and there was also a YMCA that was nearby and a local health service. And we were able to put together an event where there was, kind of 500 to 600 people there that all kind of got to know each other, and then kind of snowballed from there with getting to understand who we were, who the other people in the community were, and just create a kind of safer, more cohesive neighbourhood. So that's essentially who we are at CHL and our approach to tenancy management within social housing. And I can probably hand it back to you now, Mark, and go to the next person.
Thank you, Jamie. Listen, I'm sure there may well be some questions for Jamie. If I could ask you to please just hold off on those for now, or even better, just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them after we hear from the architects, who I'll throw to, I'm guessing, David now, to just give a brief overview of the design. Thanks, David.
Right. Okay. My name's David Carabot, Director of CHT Architects, and I'll take you through the proposal this evening. So if we could just move to the next, maybe to the slide where we have the aerial photograph. Sorry, I'll just increase the size of this on my screen so I can see what's going on. Okay, so our site at 500 Burwood Highway is interfaced by two roads, by Burwood Highway and Tyner Road. To our west, we have the aged care facility and retirement village, and to our south, we have the townhouses that have been built recently. So if you just go to the next slide. So as Mark has already said, that we've inherited an existing permit, and the images on the left-hand side of the screen are the existing permit, which was a mixed-use development with a number of different components to it. We reviewed that design with an updated brief and have developed the design that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. And we took the opportunity to look at I suppose, a more timeless scheme, more of a minimalist approach. And the reason for that is to look at materials that are sort of low maintenance and durable materials. So the building will maintain its integrity and look good forever, and also won't date. And the building to the left, was certainly from a period of time. And what we're looking for is a building that will really stand the test of time, and will be able to be maintained and look good moving into the future. With the redesign, we maintain the same height of the building, so both buildings are 8 stories high. We've shifted some of the building mass around, as you can see in the top left-hand corner. The red elements were subtracted, the green elements were added. So the building has a similar size to what it was previously as far as floor area. And the main area was really increasing the setback off Burwood Highway, which has now provided an opportunity for a great sort of landscaped north-facing area. The scheme consists of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and basement car parking. So we go to the next slide. So the next slide is along Burwood Highway. You've got the existing aged care facility there and our proposed building further down Burwood Highway. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see a bit of a close-up of that. So you can see more of a close-up there, and there's the opportunity for the landscaping buffer on that northern interface against Burwood Highway. We also took the opportunity with the redesign to look at improving the quality of the apartments and bringing them up to current standards. with respect to disability, with respect to ESD, with respect to the actual physical size of rooms, etc., and bringing them up to current code. And that was certainly an opportunity that we're able to take throughout this process. So that's fundamentally an overview of the design, and certainly there'll be no doubt there'll be questions, which I'll be certainly happy to answer.
Thank you very much, David, for that. We don't seem to have any sort of questions in the chat at this stage, so I might that effectively is the presentation. Like I sort of mentioned earlier on, this is principally about answering questions and hearing your feedback rather than us necessarily talking at you more than we need to. So if anyone has any questions, could I ask that you just raise your virtual hand in the reactions button at the bottom of your screens, and we'll endeavour to, well, we will certainly get to everybody. We'll endeavour to do that in some sort of order that we receive or see the hands.
Mark, I think Rosemary has a question.
Thank you. I'm trying to navigate myself and see where the hands are. Rosemary, go for it. Thank you. You're on mute, Rosemary. Sorry, Rosemary, we can't hear you just at the moment. You're on mute. You'll need to unmute your microphone there. Thank you.
Ah, there I am. Right, can you hear me now?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Just to David, I live in the retirement village, butting onto the very site. My back door butts onto the very site of where the new building is presumed to go. Is there any provision for my security? I know I have looked through the plans of the proposed building. There are balconies butting onto my backyard, etc. Any comment on that one?
Sorry, I'll just unmute myself. Yes, thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, look, so we have at ground level, we have a landscaped buffer. So there is a buffer between our boundary, which is of the same distance that was there previously, and in some areas we've actually pulled it back further. So there is that opportunity for landscaping, and then as we go up the buildings, again, we're in a similar line to where the building was previously, and increased it in many areas, that the setback from your boundary. So it's probably a better situation than was there previously. There were balconies that were a lot closer, and they've now been pulled back probably around about sort of 1.5 meters further than they, or further away from the boundary than they were previously.
Good. Okay then. So the height. I noticed it's not on every floor that there will be a balcony on our side, but as they go up, there are a number of balconies that do face onto our side. I'm just a little bit concerned of they can just look straight down into our backyard area.
Yeah, look, I suppose there's the angle of view too, depending on how deep your yard is, and there are a number of units there. So I think maybe if we could get some feedback from you on which particular one it is, we could have a closer look at that for you as well. But certainly it's a much better situation than was there previously. Part of the design is actually we've shrunk the footprint in a east-west direction. So we've pulled it off the boundary quite significantly more than what was there previously.
Okay, thank you.
Rosemary, I might just add to what David said, and then if you could give us a little bit more detail, perhaps about where your particular home is via the email address provided in the letter that you've received, we can have a bit more of a look into that for you and get back to you with a personal response to that.
Great. Yep. Okay. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. David, I believe yours is the hand I saw next. Yep. Yours is up. Go for it.
Can you hear?
I can. Yep.
Yeah, good. My question is about, I'll start off saying I just think the site's a poor choice. Yeah. Actually, I like the building. I like the slide. Actually, the building looked quite good, so I'm happy with that. But I think it's a bad choice for property. And I'm just curious if the planners are aware of the traffic problems at that intersection in Tyner Road. I have listed them in my feedback, my community feedback, which was no access to Burwood Highway. Tyner Road itself has a 24-hour, 40-kilometre zone. It also has no parking. It has school drop-off pickup problems between 3 and 4. It's about 5-6 car lengths away from Knox City Shopping Centre, one of their busy intersections. Presently, cars are overflowing into the street from the buildings that were built on the other part of that old site. So just wondering, apart from what's the plan with access and exiting that building onto a busy road?
I'll perhaps have a go at answering that in the first instance. David, thanks for the question. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up, so I assume that's a pretty popular comment and a view that's shared by a number of people, so thank you. I guess the first thing to say is that there is a traffic engineer that's part of the consultant team here and that has guided the design of those aspects of the proposal that we see or that you have had the opportunity to review. They're not here this evening, but they've absolutely been part of the team and advising on these matters. So absolutely take your comments on board and perhaps direct them back to the traffic engineers who'll be better placed to probably answer them than some of the others, I guess, from our team that are in the room tonight. But I think that perhaps the other relevant factor to your question or concern, and perhaps it's preempting, but perhaps it might be something else that other people might potentially comment on, is that the planning scheme as it's set up to deal with accommodation uses of the nature proposed here, like social housing, identifies a lower car parking rate than conventional housing. So I guess from a traffic flow perspective and volume of traffic perspective, there will be less cars in this development than what you might expect from a different type of housing proposal. So not sure whether that goes any way to alleviating the sort of concerns that you're mentioning. Like I said, we'll get back to our traffic engineers on that. But I guess that's my initial answer and information in response to that question.
Well, just to add another one too, when they built the property next door, 127 Tyner Road, they had the advantage of parking all their construction vehicles on the nature strip of that property and on the Food Star site, and using the Food Star site as a work site, work office. But there's nowhere to go now. I don't know where the contractors are going to possibly put their vehicles when they build it.
I don't know, David, whether you probably might be maybe the most informed person around construction, or perhaps even Nandor, about how that would likely play out. I mean, a development of this sort of size and nature will, I think, inevitably cause some amount of disruption. It's just goes with the territory. But David, do you want to give a little bit of insight there, if you could?
Yeah, look, there is always disruption when there's construction. There's no point me saying that that's not going to be the case. The advantage we have with this redesign is that we've got a substantial setback within our property boundary on Burwood Highway now. So that would certainly allow for all the site sheds, all the equipment that needs to be stored on site, materials can be stored in that component of the site. There will be the ability for some car parking. And what would normally happen with a project like this is the basement will be built firstly, and when the basement's built, there isn't a huge number of tradesmen on site. There tends to be only one trade, which is the concrete trade. Once the basement is completed, it allows then for facilities to be moved into the basement during the construction program, which will free up part of the site. Some of the car parking can be allocated in the basement for subcontractors, some of them in that front setback. But also, what is normally the case now with all councils and with all projects is that the builder will have to submit a construction management plan and explain to council how they're going to deal with things like vehicle parking of subcontractors, traffic movement, from time to time if they have craneage on site. All those elements will have to be explained, and there'll be I suppose a book of rules that'll be approved by council, and that's what the builders will have to follow. So hopefully that sort of gives you a bit more clarity in that question.
As long as they plan for it, yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
No problem.
David. Thanks, both Davids. There's a couple of hands up, but I think Councillor Cooper, yours was first, so I'll go to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Mark, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. I'm mostly just coming along to hear everybody's contribution to the conversation this evening and to take on board obviously what the community are asking and what answers they're receiving this evening. But I just want to thank David Roos. The questions that you asked, David, are the questions which I have been receiving in my inbox ever since our local residents have become aware. And I would have to say again that I think the biggest issues that are being raised at the moment are the congestion concerns, obviously from the build. There's also a lot of congestion which already takes place because of the school at school times in the morning and at pickup. And there is also a perceived I think anxiety around safety and antisocial behaviour as a result of the public housing. So I think that that's something that we could probably talk a little bit more about because I think our community are also feeling a little bit concerned in that area. But otherwise, I really think your presentation is fantastic. It's certainly answered a lot of questions which I've been asked throughout the last probably few weeks, especially. And yes, I'm here and listening, and welcome anyone to reach out and have a chat with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Bill, you've got your hand up there. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, Mark, excuse me. The general question I want to ask is, I, like Rosemary, live directly behind the proposed scheme, and I just wonder why, I only found out about this yesterday, or today rather, why people who were directly concerned weren't notified by letter that this was taking place. I mean, I didn't know about it. I found out about it accidentally, and I wouldn't have known nothing about this. So that's my first concern. The rest of it, I go along with Rosemary and David Roos in regard to the Rosemary side of it, living directly behind. The height of a building is just, to me, just ridiculously high for this area, because it just blocks out everything at my back door, back window. And I'm very concerned about that. And also the question was raised by David, David Bruce, about the construction, parking and all this, and the buildings going up, if it goes up, which I hope it doesn't, if I may say that. And the congestion again, we've got the school there, and it's just, Tidal Road just can't handle that traffic. It's just not on. And that's just my concerns. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Bill. I'll perhaps try just to firstly address the concern that you initially expressed about not receiving a letter. We're surprised to hear that. We've been working closely with the council to send out letters to all residents within both adjoining the site and within a broader perimeter of the site to make sure that they are aware of the proposal and more specifically of the session tonight. So I'm glad you've found out in some way, albeit there seems to be something not gone quite right there. So hopefully that's not a broader issue. But based on, sorry, Bill.
Very lack of communication in that respect. I think lack of communication. I think in that respect, it just wasn't on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Finding out this late. You know.
Certainly it wasn't intentional, and the letters went out more than a week ago. And we understood they had gone to everybody that could potentially be affected. So apologies if you haven't received it, but certainly not through lack of sort of an endeavour and intent. We've and this is, I guess, is for everyone that's joining us tonight, and anyone that you know that might be interested that's not here tonight. There is obviously some contact details for UPCO's office, both telephone and email contact, and you're more than welcome to contact us with any questions, queries, comments, concerns, and we'll endeavour to sort of get back to you on those. So I guess I offer my apologies, Bill. Certainly we had understood that everyone had received letters and should have had them for a number of days in the lead up to this evening. So apologies for that.
Thank you, Mark.
And take your point on the traffic matters that have been previously raised by David, and also your views about the height of the building, which I think David Carabot, the architect, has sort of addressed in some capacity, at least, that there is an existing approved building envelope, I guess, which I guess from our perspective establishes whether everyone agrees with that or not. There is an acceptable or an level of acceptability around a building of that type of scale in this location through an existing approval, and we've endeavoured to sort of reduce those sort of impacts or at least neutralise them in redesigning within more or less that approved building envelope. So hopefully that provides you with a bit of a response. No doubt it won't be necessarily resolving your concerns, but I guess that's the context from I guess the project team's perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
James, have you got a question for us?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Just a quick one. I guess I live in the development here at 127 Tyner Road. We didn't receive any notification of this planning permit, or as you call it, as they call it, an amendment. To me, it's not really an amendment. It's a completely different building proposal. So it should have been a new building permit, in my opinion. But and I just feel like we've all been deceived here. Like this whole development that they're proposing now is completely different to what we were told when we bought these townhouses. Like we were told that there was going to be retail and restaurants with apartments on top of that. Okay. That compared to 8 stories of public housing is a completely different proposition. And like for them to build these townhouses first and then put public housing next door is, to me, it's like we've all been deceived. We've all just been duped. And I feel really aggrieved by it, because it's this proposal is going to totally devalue our properties. Like we've all paid way too much for these townhouses, because if we knew what was going to happen next door, most of us wouldn't have bought here. And if we did, we definitely wouldn't have paid what we did. And we're not going to be able to get our money back or anything like that for a long period of time if this development goes ahead. I work in service industry and I work in Richmond. I've worked in St Kilda. I work in Fitzroy. I work in places where as a contractor, and I see what happens in these developments, and I don't want any part of it. You know, like I know there's people that have genuine needs for public housing, but there's a lot of people that are in there that are you just don't want around you. You know, people with drug problems, people with, like, I understand people have got mental health problems, but if they're not supervised, they're dangerous. And, you know, a lot of us have got small children, kids, and this is not what we signed up for. So for mine, this development should have been built first, if that's what they wanted to do, and then built the townhouses. And then you have the option, do you want to live here or not? But the fact that they haven't done that, I feel it's totally inappropriate for this development to be going ahead on this site with neighbours that are already pre-existing here. I feel like this sort of development needs to be built somewhere where there's no pre-existing neighbours around it, and then you can build around it from there once you know what's there. So that's my feeling. I suppose that's more for I'd like the councillor to hear that opinion, because I know I'm not the only one with that opinion. And yeah, I feel really, really aggrieved by this whole development. I just feel like we've all been duped. So yeah. Anyway, that's my 10 cents worth, but I just wanted to put it out there because yeah, I think this is just wrong. But anyway, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, James, and thanks for yours, and thanks for honestly sharing your concerns. I guess I might just make a comment about this first part of what you were saying in terms of it being an amendment application. I think certainly didn't mean to convey that it was an amendment. It is, for all intents and purposes, a new proposal. There's no doubt about that. I guess references to the existing approval were more or less to provide some context around what's previously been established, I guess, as an appropriate built form and size of a building response to the site. So the other thing I would add is that this Big Housing Build initiative is a very new government initiative that's aimed at obviously delivering community and social housing across Victoria. It's part of really the government's pandemic response. So I can assure you that it hasn't been something that's been an intention of the landowner for very long. It certainly wasn't an intention before the initiative was created by the state government about 12 months ago. So it's very much a change in tact from, I guess, delivering what is approved to something different. So I don't know whether, Jamie, in hearing some of James's feedback, whether you would like to add anything in response.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Mark, and also just to kind of address some of the things that Councillor Cooper had talked about as well. So just in regards to the social housing, I mean, I guess this is something that does come up often when we are building social housing, is almost the fear of the unknown. And I guess a couple of things just to point out to people is that we are different to public housing in a sense that public housing is all off the priority wait list for housing. It's 100% government owned and controlled. So as a not-for-profit, we will be, so in terms of like the allocation process to understand how that works, we tend to have a little bit more say and control over that. So we still use the Victorian Housing Register. We take people on there who might be of a high need, but they could just be people who were on a low income. We can have what we do is we try and have a balance and a mix. So we don't just, I guess, say, put anyone into a property. What we'll do is we go through a process to make sure that they're a good fit for the community. You know, there are obviously always people that we house who are of a high need, and we do work with those tenants in particular to support them. But I guess as a more cohesive way of working as a community housing provider, we have a bit more room to move in terms of ensuring that we've got a good mix of people there. I know that James had referred to some of the places in Fitzroy and I think it was St Kilda and Richmond. I think we're doing some work at the moment, working with some of the public housing towers in Flemington and those areas as well. And people in those areas, I guess, have the same sorts of concerns, and we're trying to go through the process to let people know that we are working, I guess, with a similar group of people, but they're actually just people from families to singles on low incomes. So we tend to find that the way that we work as well with community has a better way of trying to address those concerns as well. So we would work with the community to help people understand the people who are living there. And, you know, by all, you know, most of the time it generally works fine. And that we stay connected with community so that we know what's going on so we can address anything if it does happen. But I guess there's just those elements around safety and security that people have concerns about. I think that is the type of thing that we do to work with community to ensure that we are monitoring what happens there, but also as well to undertake passive surveillance as well, I guess you'd call it, where we work with community to be our eyes and ears about what is happening there. But we find that most of the time it's actually the people who are within, let's just say this complex, that kind of self-govern. So what we'll do is we'll have people there that my team would work with the housing operations team to say, okay, if something's not right here, then you need to let us know straight away, as opposed to needing for something to happen. So it's a kind of more of a proactive approach through community development, rather than, I think in like the days of old where, something might be reported and then that's the only way it happens. So we try to be a bit more proactive. Doesn't always work out that way. But hopefully that just gives you a bit of an understanding of how we do work with people and try and get a good fit for community as much as we can. So for example, we wouldn't just put people all in one building who have a mental health support, or someone who you wouldn't put all people together who are experiencing family violence. You would actually have a mixture, just like any other place. And in actual fact, unlike private housing, I guess this thing is we do have control over what that community looks like, and we do have the ability to obviously evict people if we do need to, but obviously there's a process to go through, just like there is for any housing landlord. But hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an understanding of how we operate and how we try to piece the community together at the beginning.
Jamie, thanks for that. I'm conscious that there's a few comments coming into the chat here, but I'll perhaps just go to Tony Chen, who's asked a specific question about those security type issues. And listen, Tony, Jamie may well have provided his answer to that then. I might ask you just to let us know whether you have any further questions on that particular topic of Jamie, or whether he's covered it off in sufficient detail to give you a bit more of an understanding on that.
So I'm actually not in the position of talking because I'm not in a pretty noisy environment, but I do need Jamie to elaborate a little bit more in terms of what type of security that they can provide to ensure the neighbor's safety.
So Tony, just to give you a bit of an idea, depending on, and I'd have to find out what is in place here in terms of security cameras, but in the past we have had places where we might have security cameras where we can have surveillance. We'll also undergo passive surveillance. So what we try and do is ensure that we understand and work with community. So we have a community development approach. So what I mean by that is that we get to know our neighbours, and we want our neighbours to know everyone. So it's kind of common, I guess, we would hope it would be kind of common knowledge in everyone's life that if you know your neighbour, you generally feel a little bit safer about what's going on. You kind of talk to each other. If you see someone who's different in the street, you think, oh, why are they here? What are they doing? We try and alleviate those concerns by trying to create opportunities for people to know each other. Doesn't mean people need to be friends with each other. Not everyone gets along, but just so that people are aware of who's there and who to turn to and who to go to, and opportunities where we can also, be available for so different avenues where people can contact us, or also, people within the community. So to give you an example, at other sites that we have, we might have a development, and our people who live within our developments might be friends with someone who lives next door in private housing, and between the two of them, they kind of talk and they kind of self-govern, if that makes sense. So we really try and become part of the community. So the community drives what we do. So we'll do everything that we can to we're not just a landlord. So, private housing providers, if it was private rental, they're a landlord, they're a kind of Nelson Alexander, if you like, and, they will look after their tenancy. We have much more of a broader focus on the wider community and making sure that we're part of that community. So that's how we try and alleviate those things.
Is there anywhere there online that we can find out how many properties that you guys are managing and where are they across Australia? I just want to see what the community is like around there.
Yeah, if you go onto our website, you'll find out where our properties are located. I don't know if there's something on there that literally
Sorry to
addresses.
interrupt, because we actually get no notification whatsoever from anybody until I actually found out about this morning. So I think it's right or fair for us to get sufficient information in terms of who each contacts are, at least something in writing.
Yeah, Tony, on that note, I'm getting a few messages as well in this chat that it seems to be that the residents of 127 Tyner Road in particular weren't aware or didn't receive the letters. I addressed someone else's question earlier, and that we had understood that letters had been sent out to the community and that everyone should have received them. So that's something that we'll take up with the council, who we're working with, to make sure those letters went out and hit the mark. So thank you everyone for your feedback in the chat about that. But in the invitation to this meeting tonight, there was a link to the CHVL website with all of the information that you'll need and links to all of the material that is related to the project. If you follow that in the invitation you received, you'll be provided with all the material and contact details. And of course, if you've got any questions about anything, there's contact details for Holly and myself on that page, and we can, you can direct those queries specifically to UPCO, and we'll help to answer them for you. So apologies to everyone who hasn't received a letter. It's a surprise to us. It's something that we'll have a discussion with the council about to see sort of what's gone on there.
Hey, Mark, can I just interrupt you there? I think it's a bit late for an apology now. We should all have had notification, and it just boils down to the fact that we didn't get it, and it's not right. So going back to the council is not going to solve the problem. We should have been notified in the first place.
Well, no, I appreciate that, Bill, but I think that going to the council will make sure that anyone who's not here tonight and still may not have received a letter, we can rectify that within the consultation period, which still has a couple of weeks to run. So we want to make sure, obviously, the people that have told us that they haven't been receiving letters that are here tonight, that's, I guess, probably less problematic for us because we know now that you know about it. But I think that the benefit of going and having a chat with the council about that is to make sure that there's no one out there that should know that doesn't currently know. So that's the context within which I make those comments, I guess, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you. There's some hands up and there's some messages. I'm just going to look through the messages here. First, I think we were speaking to Tony before. Tony had an earlier question around or comment that the social housing, when the community housing permit was granted and the basis for which that approval was granted, the proposal that we're discussing tonight, just to clarify, that, Tony, hasn't been approved. It hasn't actually even been formally lodged as an application. It's at the consultation phase. So it's at a point in the process where we're seeking feedback from the public and other stakeholders, including the council. So there is no approval in place. In fact, an application hasn't been formally lodged for the assessment of the state government at this stage. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. My question was actually because James has already asked and answered most of the concern that we have as a owner of 127 Tyner Road. But it's not only that's a monetary issue for us, and it's also a security issue. And it just like would it been the residents, then we should have at least our say in it.
Sure. A couple of questions or comments in here about the parking as distinct from traffic, which I think we've probably already covered off with David Roos's initial question. So I'm just going to those. So there's a comment in here about perhaps parking being insufficient and that visitors haven't been accounted for. I guess in response to that, the planning scheme, which is effectively the roadmap that we adhere to in the designing of these proposals, identifies a rate of parking provision for social housing that has been deemed by the planning authorities to be appropriate. That rate of provision is inclusive of visitor parking. So it's all users of the building, including residents and visitors. And I guess all I can say in response to that is the proposal that is currently being consulted on complies with that minimum rate of parking provision. So I guess in the extent that that planning scheme gives us a roadmap and sets the rules for these types of things, we've adhered to that. Notwithstanding, appreciate there might be differences of opinions about whether that the planning scheme has got that right, but I guess from where we sit, that is the tool that we necessarily need to use to design these types of proposals, and we've done that. I'm just, if you bear with me one moment, I'm just flicking through these comments to see whether there's anything that we haven't sort of covered off. I might go to some people with their hands up, and I'm not sure in which order they went up, so I'm just going to go in the order that they appear on my screen. I'll start with Ewan. Joseph, if you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, sorry. I live in also in 127 Tyner as well. So my biggest concern is that with this proposal, yes, there's a poor communication that we found out here. The three direct impact community with this proposal are not aware. One of them is us in 127. We are behind the proposed building, and we don't know anything about it. The second one is the HK behind it is only one is a Rosemary joining it, and also Bill Cook. And then one is direct impact is the biggest one. It's a school, and I'm just worried that nobody represent them. So I'm just questioning again: are the school aware that there's going to be building this proposal? So if there's nobody in representing the school, then there should be extremely worried about us, especially the parents will not know what's going on around them. So that's my first question. And the second one is that what is the next step of this? For us, a community, if we have a concern, who should we bring up our concern is? Is it to you or to Councillor Lisa?
I'll answer both of those questions. Thank you for them. Firstly, the school is aware. I believe that Darren Waterworth is here from the school tonight. So we had an RSVP from one of the school leaders. So the answer to that question is that they are aware, and Darren, I believe, is in the meeting tonight. Sorry, the second part of your question, if I'm honest, when I've actually just had a bit of a mind blank. Sorry, could you repeat the second part of your question? Apologies.
Right. So with the concern from the community that we heard so far, because as what you understand, you just answered the question is that there's no application yet. It's just a proposal. How are the communities going to be, how to say, showing their concern? Is it to you or as a project, or to Councillor Lisa?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. To us at UPCO, rather than the Calman. I'm sure the councillor will invite you to contact her as well. But in terms of providing your thoughts and views about the project, you send them to us. When we now have your email address because you've attended the meeting, we'll send you a direct message after tonight with contact details and some information and a link to the project if you don't already have that, with all the instructions and information about who you need to put questions to or put comments to. And that is effectively UPCO rather than the council, in order for them to be considered as part of the application that will be prepared in the coming weeks to be formally lodged with the state government.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I've just got a very quick question, Mark, if that's okay. Sorry.
Of course.
I've got a terrible connection, so I hope everyone can hear me well enough. I've just noticed a lot of people have not received any information, obviously, about this evening, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to hold another session similar to tonight where we can obviously have an opportunity for the mail to get to the people who haven't received theirs yet, or to get another letter out. I noted in our chat that Darren Waterworth has said that he just received his, and it was dated the 11th of March, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So it's quite clear that something that the mail's being held up at the moment, and people have missed the opportunity to join tonight. So just curious if there would be another opportunity that we could do this again.
Yeah, I think that's not out of the question. I think that if we receive feedback that people that haven't been or had the benefit of joining tonight and would like to have a similar session, or if there's questions that they that perhaps we can't answer directly, if they contact us, then maybe that there might be the benefit in holding another session in the circumstances where it is becoming sort of more evident that there's some people that haven't perhaps received the letters. The letters have obviously mostly hit the mark, we think, because we've received a number of requests to attend tonight, and the attendance is strong. We've also received a number of phone calls and emails and submissions in response to those letters that have been received. So we've got some confidence that it's not a big problem in terms of, it's obviously a problem for people who haven't received them, but I'm not sure how many letters went out, but it would seem as though most of those have hit the mark, just sort of anecdotally on the response we've received. But I guess the short answer to the question is that it's certainly not out of the question if we uncover in the next day or so that it is a broader problem than we hope it is. Thank you. VW have their hand up. I'm sorry, I can't refer to you by your name.
That's all right, Mark. Yeah, that's all right. Just firstly, I think you mentioned the number of residents that joined this meeting is an indication of the letters, but I think I tend to disagree. I only actually found out about this from a neighbor who just happened to also walk past the sign. So had that neighbor not told me and I not told my other neighbors, then obviously the large chunk of these people may not have attended this meeting. So I think I do disagree with that statement potentially, that the large number of people attending is reflective of letters being received. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. I guess my question for now is really, Jamie, you touched on the passive security and those kind of things, but I think it's, from my perspective, I don't know about everyone else, it seems a bit too high level and not too, we'd really like more elaboration. Just as an example, obviously that corner will be a high foot traffic corner for the school kids as well. There's a lot of young kids that walk to school, and I guess the safety is there. And I guess for a lot of parents that are looking to put their kids into school, obviously St. Andrews is quite a prestigious school and a lot of people desire to go there. But I think just from the last day of discussing with people, and a lot of our friends have young kids that are about to go into the school age, they're really heavily reconsidering entering St. Andrews at this stage just because of that safety concern. And I guess, yeah, I appreciate, Jamie, you trying to elaborate on the safety, but I think there's no real affirmations or really real strong conviction to us that that'll be can be monitored. I mean, because obviously, let's say you build the house now and happy days, everyone has there. But what happens if there's these incidents occurring? As James touched on, in those areas such as Richmond, there's a high level of antisocial behavior. And obviously, what would it take? We really are concerned about those kids and the safety of the street itself. There's a lot of young families with kids. So, I mean, that we don't, like for me personally, I don't know about everyone else on the call, I didn't get a lot of strong reassurances on the safety and security.
I can try and elaborate on that for you a little bit more. It is always difficult because everyone obviously has their own concerns about who might be moving in. And I guess what I would put back to people is to say that there's going to be young families moving in there. They're just on low incomes. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. And our kind of experience would suggest that that is the case. In terms of the type of monitoring that we would have, like I said, we do have regular housing officers who would be there. They were not going to be there all the time, though. It's not a site where there's 24/7 someone going to be there. That's just not the nature of the complex. We would try really hard to work with local residents if there were any concerns, but I mean, we would be, if something did, and when I say something, I mean, it's hard to know what you might be referring to exactly, but I guess the concern is that there's social housing, people are unaware of what that might be, but there's kind of social housing everywhere. Most people just don't know it. And I think that with this development, it would give us the opportunity to, people wouldn't know it was social housing, for example. It's not like you might drive past some place and go, oh, that's a public housing place, that's a social housing place. I mean, we very much try to immerse ourselves in community with design and also in our approach. So, for example, if this proposal went through, one of the things that the community team would be doing straight away would be to meet with residents who wanted to from, is it 127? I think it is the complex I think you're referring to, where there's a number of people who clearly have some concerns. We'd work closely with the school. So, if there was people wanted to know more about that, we're very approachable. And we want people to know who is living there. We want people to be immersed in that community, and we want people to be understanding who's in their community. So I wouldn't say that we are housing people who are going to cause you problems. I just think that it's perhaps people are unaware of what they don't know. And all I can try and do is assure you that we go through an allocation process where we try to create a community amongst the people that we're putting in there, and that those people are, some people have fallen onto tough times, there's no doubt. And a lot of people are just there on low incomes, trying to do what everyone else does. So I completely take your concerns, and more than happy to address them in any way that people there felt necessary, whether that was, with more information or whatever it might be. But all I can say is that, we do have a strong connection to community in the way that we operate. So it's not just here's the keys and on off you go. So we very much do care about the places where we work, and we want our residents living there as well to not feel that stigma. We don't want them to feel like they're walking into their home, their safety net, and being judged instantly as well. So there's actually a bit of education there that we need to do with community to help people understand the people that we work with, that it's their home and their place of comfort and safety as well. So it's very, very important that we all know who each other is, so that, we can try and work together as best as we can. And probably doesn't answer your question exactly. It's quite difficult to give, unless you're actually addressing a specific example of safety or security, it's hard to put something of it, but hopefully that gives you a bit of understanding, at least as to how we operate.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. Just going to the comments in the chat, I might, Jamie, just keep you there, because there is one from Victor here about the proportion, I guess, of one-bedroom apartments within the scheme, and a question about how suitable they would be for young families. I guess that probably goes more broadly to the question of the anticipated makeup of residents, which I know that you've touched upon, but did you want to perhaps just provide a quick response to that?
I guess what I would say to that is we would be housing a mixture of people. So we would have people of all ages within the development. It wouldn't just be young people, older people, single parents, for example. We would look to have a mixture of people of different ages within the community, because we find that having just one cohort of people, which predominantly with, I guess, some previous troubled public housing models, that was what made them so problematic in terms of antisocial behaviour, was their allocation model. So we try and have a bit of flexibility in that. So having big families in a 1 or 2 bedroom place is obviously not realistic, but we probably would have single parents there with a mixture of age groups, I guess, would be the best way to describe it.
Single parents, that means children.
Single parents, that means children.
Sorry, Bill, I'm not sure. I think we were hearing from you there, Bill.
Sorry,
I'm not sure, is that a question or?
No, sorry about that, Mark.
No, that's okay. All good. All good.
Mark, you're muted.
Thank you. David Roos has a chat as well here about the damage to the existing building on the site. It's thank you for raising that. It's something that I actually meant to cover off in my opening comments, that we understand from discussions that we've been having with the council that there has been some concerns around the state and condition and safety of the existing site. You've probably noticed that there's been some efforts made to, I guess, for want of a better term, to clean up the site and try and secure it in more recent times. I think there's been some...
Actually, that come about from a snap send solve for graffiti I submitted.
Sure.
And an email to the Mayor of Knox Council, just saying that even though the building is diagonally opposite from the site you're looking at, 500 Burwood Highway, I just felt they may not have seen it. Perhaps they didn't get outside or didn't go past it to see that the graffiti, and kids were breaking windows. They're still breaking windows, but they're not breaking the ones right on the front corner. They just play around the back and smash all the windows. But yeah, a bit disappointing that it had to go to us. And even the parking, sorry, if I'm going to actually talk for a minute. The snap send solve I've been using to report the parking infringements on Tyner Road, which has resulted, at least in the council, adding some no standing signs, no parking, things like that, which have helped. But that's still a problem. The traffic's still a problem. But yeah, the damage hopefully will be resolved soon. Someone will clean it up.
Yeah, no, but we appreciate your feedback. We'd become aware as a consultant team that there were some of those issues happening on the site, like I said, through discussions with the council. I guess what I can sort of say to try and assure you, David, is that there's been more recent efforts made for whatever reason, and it sounds like it may well have been in response to something that you brought to the council's attention, but there's now sort of a greater level of ongoing sort of surveillance and of the site, as well as the physical cleanup works that have happened. And I guess the most important thing to know is that the team has obtained a demolition permit for that building recently. Regardless of the outcome of this exercise, it is the intention of the landowner to act on that demolition permit within the next sort of 2 to 3 months. So within the coming weeks. So aware of the problem, it won't be, we hope it won't be a problem between now and when the building comes down, but the building will be coming down.
Can I just come in there for a minute, Mark, please?
Of course. Sure, Bill.
Just on the question of security's been upped on that site. I entirely disagree with that, because just about every other weekend, I'm directly opposite my back window, and we hear them in there bashing just about every other weekend. So I can't agree that the security's been updated. Thank you.
Okay, sure, Bill. Listen, there are comments and feedback that we can provide back to the current owner of the property, and we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosemary, you've got your hand up there. Would you like to ask a question?
I was just going to say, I actually also wrote to the council. The grass was waist high, all the graffiti, the smashing of the glass, etc., etc. Those vandals are in there at least 2 or 3 times a week, still ongoing. I ring the police at least every second time that they're there. Full credit to the police. Unfortunately, if they send a patrol car, the kids are already gone. and they are kids. They're, you know, I have actually photos of the children. They're 12, 14, 16-year-olds, male and females. And as I said, 2 or 3 times a week they're in there. So the gates on those fences that have been put around there, which at first were all locked, etc., are completely open now. Free access to the area. People are dumping their rubbish in the back of the site, bricks, rocks, household goods, etc., etc. So unfortunately, the security that was put in place by the council or the owner, whoever it was, is just been diminished. So just thought I'd just let you know that. That's all.
No, appreciate that, and listen, that's certainly feedback that we can provide, and with the hope of improving that situation in the short term between now and when that, yeah, like I said, the building is to be demolished, which is very much on the radar in the short term too. But between now and then, we'll certainly pass on that feedback. It doesn't sound like a pleasant situation at the moment, so we'll certainly pass that on. Thanks for everyone who commented on that. I don't believe.
Mark, I've just got. I can see there's a question in the chat there from James. It's a personal question, but one that I'm happy to address.
Sure.
I do actually. I've lived in the Kensington estate, which was a development managed by Unison, which is right amongst public and social housing. And currently in Fitzroy, I do live opposite transitional housing. So yes.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm conscious that we've probably got about 10 minutes left. If there are any other comments or questions that anyone's got, now is probably your time. And I'll just make some comments after I invite any sort of last questions about the notification issues. But for now, if there's any other questions, please let us know.
Mark, Darren from the school, St Andrews Christian College.
G'day, Darren.
Just who are the current owners of the site? And after this development happened, or if a development happens, who is the eventual owners of the site?
CHVL, I understand, will take formal ownership of the site if the development is approved. I'm getting some nodding of the head from Gareth and Jamie, I think. The current owners of the site are a private landowner that were the previous permit applicants for the existing permit application.
Right, thanks.
No problem. If there are no other questions, obviously this notification, it's a little bit, there is a little bit of sort of uncertainty around whether the reason that people haven't received letters that should have might be just because of postal delays potentially. But what I might ask everyone to do, if they could, anyone that's in the meeting tonight, if they could drop a quick email to UPCO at the 500 burwood@upco.com.au, just to let us know where you live. It might just provide us with a bit more information about whether this is a sort of a problem for certain properties or otherwise, or at least help us get to the bottom of it. So if you could spend a minute doing that, it might actually help us and in turn help your neighbours to become more aware of things if they're not already. So that, I guess, is just my thoughts on how we might sort of attempt to resolve that. So thank you if you could do that. Holly, were you saying there was another question in there that I'd overlooked? If there is, feel free to chime in.
Aside from the Collingwood photo comment, thanks, David. I think we've covered off everything. There was a question from Tony just about a link to the website for CHVL, or for Jamie to provide that. So I'm happy to provide that in the link. Otherwise, there is a link to the website in the letter provided, or if you scan the QR code on the site, on site, that will take you directly to the website. So that's the answer to that question, hopefully. Just checking everything else. I think that was all, Mark. I think you've covered, yourself and Jamie have covered up most.
Predictably, I forgot to mention the QR code because it just goes a little bit above. We should all be used to those by now, shouldn't we? But so thank you for that, and thank you to everybody for your interest in the project, for joining in tonight, and for your feedback. As we sort of outlined at the start, all of the feedback that we do receive will be considered in informing the final design response that will be ultimately form the part of the formal application to the state government for approval of the site. So thank you for that. Just a quick mention that the consultation the consultation window that we're now in is open for another couple of weeks. It closes on the 14th of April. So there's certainly plenty of time to get any further queries that you might have to us, any written comments that you would like us to be considering in sort of going forward in refining the design of the proposal prior to lodgement of the formal application. By all means, that's what this exercise is all about. Please do contact us by email or by phone. Thank you again for your participation. I can see, Tony, you're sort of putting some further questions in there about the letter. If you could please email us, we can send you a copy of the letter, and that goes for everyone that hasn't received the letter that might be in here tonight. So we can certainly provide you with a copy, and it's obvious you haven't got a copy at this stage. So we'll try our best to rectify that situation if you send us an email, please.
Mark, sorry, would you mind just posting those emails on the chat so that those who may not have gotten the letter know which email to liaise with?
Good idea, thank you.
I also believe that Bill would like to say something.
Go for it. Bill, did you say Nandor?
Yeah, yes. Just one question. You said this is going to the state government for approval. Was the local member notified of this conversation tonight? So I think he should have been in on it.
We weren't required to directly notify the local member for Parliament.
Well, I think he should have been in on it.
He's probably aware of it, but no,
I don't think he should have been in on it. But it's too late now. But he should have been in on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. There are certain, just I guess to clarify a bit further, there are certain requirements for the project team in terms of notification, and we've endeavoured to uphold those. Evidently, some people that haven't got letters should have got letters haven't, but we'll obviously seek to rectify that.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
I noticed Holly's just posted the email address in the chat, so if you want to write that down and drop us a line, by all means, please do that. Thank you all again for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and by all means, be in touch with us if you've got any more questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good night.
Cheers.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.